What is up, loyal lads and ladies? My name is Midnight Wolf, and welcome to another episode of the Wolf on the Field show. In today's episode, I'm going to be going over my mid-season top 10 teams, and more specifically, like in regards to that, I have had kind of specific criteria of the teams that I feel like are the most consistent and who has the quality losses. So that's kind of the main criteria of how I'm going to be ranking these teams. So there's going to be quite a few differences from my poll compared to a lot of the mainstream media polls. However, I think it's a fair assessment, at least where we're at currently in the season, of where these teams are at, who's been kind of the more impressive teams, the teams that I believe have the best shot making the college football playoffs, and overall who's been the most consistent up to this point. Now, obviously, the season is still young. I mean, we're only at the halfway point, so there will be plenty of opportunities to be proven wrong. There'll be plenty of opportunities for certain teams that are on the outside of this list that will be able to prove themselves and make their way into this list. Teams within this list will be able to prove themselves to improve on the list itself. So, but this is kind of where I think the teams are. So we'll cover that here in just a little bit. And then also, we will also get started. I'm a little late to the party on this one, but get started on my Wolf poll spreadsheet for the mid-season. So the idea behind that is in week one, I wanted to see how the team started off the season. So I have my own poll that uses statistical data to rank teams, and I did one at the start of the season, and now I'm going to take that same spreadsheet and I'm going to put in data that we've have from weeks 1 through 6, and technically week 0, of course. So that way we can get an idea of where these teams end up. Now, I've already said this back in week 1 in regards to this poll. It's kind of broken, not going to lie. It caters to really good offensive teams and not really enough for defensive teams. So teams that have really good defenses kind of are suffering in this poll. However, I put a big emphasis on winning your games. So if you're winning your games, you're going to be highly ranked on that poll. If you're losing your games, you're going to be pretty low. So the other statistics just kind of help fine tune where you're at in the poll, really. So this is the first year that I'm doing this poll. Next year, I plan on adding more criteria, more statistics that will help make it a more accurate thing. But because I started thinking of other statistics that I could put into it after the season already started, I'm gonna wait to update that till next season. And I will definitely have more criteria and reward better defenses. I also think adding special teams criteria to the list would be really good too as well, because they're just as important. So I'm definitely going to fine tune this list, and hopefully in the years to come, this will be a really solid way to figure out who's the best team, at least on paper, going forward. And it will be completely 100% unbiased. Now, this first list that I'm going to go over is my top 10. It is kind of biased, possibly. However, it's kind of a little bit of the eye test, if you will, and a little bit of what I've seen. So this, not the poll that I'm about to do later on, but the top 10 list is the one that will be a little bit, probably a little biased, but it's basically just how I've felt about these certain teams and that sort of thing. But yeah, no, that's what we'll do here in just a little bit. But first, I wanted to kind of go over my top 10 list. So let me go ahead and get all of that kind of situated here. Let's go ahead and remove that, and then boot up this, and there we go. All right. The Wolf's top 10 in the college football. Yeah, so right off the bat, I think that coming at number 10, I think Texas deserves a spot in the top 10. I'm can't stand Texas, but I cannot deny how consistent they've been, and they are probably the best one-loss team right now, and that is why I have them still in the top 10. I think that is a pretty solid spot. They played Oklahoma very, very well, yet came up short in literally every other game. I think every game that they've played, they've scored a minimum of 30 points or more, and so like that's really good. So I don't have a problem with having Texas at number 10. I think that, you know, their one loss, at least currently, does not define their season. However, time will tell how they do the rest of their season, and we'll see if Oklahoma and Texas has a rematch. And I'll get to Oklahoma here in just a little bit in that regards. But yeah, no, I think 10 is a good spot. I think they're the best one-loss team in the country right now, and really the only reason I have them even this low right now, I think they could easily be a top 6 team right now, but because there are other undefeated teams, I want to reward the undefeated teams. However, I wanted to put at least one loss team in the top 10, and I think Texas is the most deserving of that. So not much more I could say. I mean, they do have an impressive win over Alabama, and that's probably why they've gotten so much hype surrounding them. But you also can't deny how consistent they've been, scoring basically 30 points a game. So, yeah, enough about Texas. Coming in at number 9. So this is a team that's kind of been under the radar. In terms of the media, nobody's really been talking about this team a whole lot. They're kind of like doing really well consistently and looking really solid. And that team is North Carolina. They're taking care of business. I haven't really been watching their games, but looking at the box scores, they seem to be doing everything that you could be asking of in regards to that team. And I mean, they had a very impressive win this past weekend against Syracuse, a decent Syracuse team. I think that made it a 2-loss Syracuse, if I remember right. After NC obliterated them. I mean, I think the final score was like 40-7 or something like that. Excellent performance. I think that of the undefeated teams, they have a good solid chance of really making a statement coming up. And they played a really good South Carolina team pretty well, a team that gave even Georgia some fits, and so I mean, I don't have a problem with having North Carolina at number 9. So props to them for getting the job done, even though I can't really stand Mac Brown, but anyways, moving on to Louisville. They're another undefeated team, and they have a very impressive win against Notre Dame. And it wasn't that they barely squeaked by that game. They dominated Notre Dame. And say what you will about Notre Dame, I think that they have been kind of overhyped myself, at least at the start of the season. I don't think there was really enough information about them to really justify having them so highly ranked. However, they are a very well-respected program, and Louisville had their way with them. Their defense was outstanding against Notre Dame, and they look like a top 10 team. And so that is why I think that Louisville deserves a number 8 spot in this ranking, and they can very well, if they run the table, they could very well make the playoffs. I don't see why not. I mean, that is a very impressive win with Notre Dame, and so they should definitely get all the credit in the world in that regards. I think that they are a pretty solid football team, and they could possibly surprise some people in the near future. So don't have a problem with putting Louisville at number 8. Next, we are going to move on to, this is kind of an interesting one because they've been pretty consistent. However, there is one game that kind of concerned me. And I totally forgot to click the transition button for Louisville. My bad. So yeah, there's Louisville at 8. Washington is a team that has been consistent and they've looked really, really good. However, they've showed quite a bit of problems at Arizona. Granted, it was at Arizona, so it was an away game, but they showed that they are human and they showed that they have some work to do. And that is why I have them at number 7 compared to another Pac-12 team that I will get to in a little bit. I think that they very well could make it to the playoffs. I mean, they're going to be playing Oregon this week. They have every opportunity to prove themselves. So I don't have a problem with having Washington at number 7. But the reason why I have them a little bit lower than some other teams is because Arizona kind of gave them fits. And I'm sorry that I, especially an Arizona team that almost beat USC, and I don't think USC is a very good football team. Great offense, really great quarterback, who kind of bails out the offense. And I think that, Arizona, the fact that they gave Washington fits was just, I'm going to penalize that compared to the other Pac-12. Still highly ranked, number 7. That's a very respectful spot. But you can definitely prove yourself, but that I think is a very fair spot for them for right now until they can prove themselves against Oregon. Next, we have, let's see, we have Michigan. This one's probably going to spark quite a bit of controversy. I definitely have Michigan lower than a lot of other people, and I think for a decent reason. One reason is, like, of course, many people are saying the same thing that I'm about to say in this regard, but it's kind of like, who have they played? Their best opponent that they have played are the Rutgers. Now, it's a one-loss Rutgers team. That their only loss is to Michigan so far, but I'm just not that impressed with who they've played. And people have complained about, like, okay, who has Oklahoma played and that sort of thing up, before they played Texas. Same sort of thing with Michigan. It's like, who have they played? It's easy to pad your stats if you play against inferior opponents. It just is. And that's people's argument of why they've kind of had their reservations of Oklahoma up to this point. Because, Oklahoma's schedule, at least the first half, hasn't been too crazy with the exception of Texas. It's not been that difficult so far. It's going to get harder. We're going to have, play Kansas and that sort of thing, but same sort of deal, Michigan. But that being said, they will have plenty of opportunities to prove themselves. They will have opportunities in the future to play really solid Big Ten teams. And if they can get through their schedule unscathed, they will have a playoff spot for, as far as I'm concerned. So be patient. I think number 6 is a good spot for Michigan because they have shown that the teams that they, that are inferior, they can beat up on and do it pretty consistently. So just because I have them at 6 doesn't mean that I don't respect Michigan in that regards. I just think that there are better resumes and more consistency than even Michigan. So, but they will find their way in if they prove themselves. And so I think that they just have to get through their schedule, and they, at that point, they will prove themselves. I'm not that impressed with them right now, but I do respect them. Now we are on to the top 5. So the first team outside looking into the playoffs, at least for me, as far as I'm concerned, Florida State. I think Florida State has had very solid moments. They have a fairly decent resume, kind of an up and a down resume, if you ask me, because there have been moments where it's like, okay, they beat pretty solid football teams, and then there have been moments where they struggled really, really bad, but they have won nonetheless. And I think that their better wins kind of gives them the edge a little bit. I mean, against LSU, I think that was a fairly solid win. I mean, yeah, it's a 2-loss LSU team. I do think that they're pretty decent. I don't think they should really be in the top 25 right now, but I would have LSU probably outside looking into the top 25. I still think they're a pretty solid football team, but I mean, that's just kind of how it is. They played Clemson very well. Very close game, if I remember right. But yeah, I think that Florida State has a pretty solid resume so far. However, I think other teams have a better resume than what Florida State has, and that is why I have Florida State outside looking in. Kind of the same situation with Michigan in regards to, if you win your games, there's a pretty solid chance you're going to make the playoffs, but you've got to get through the rest of your season unscathed. Otherwise, I think Florida State's one of those teams that if you lose one game, there will probably be plenty of other one-loss teams that will have a bigger benefit of the doubt than Florida State does. I think Florida State's kind of walking on eggshells with their season, and depending on how things go, if there are plenty of other one-loss teams when it's all said and done, I think that those other teams will probably get the benefit of the doubt. So sucks for Florida State, but you know, they definitely squeaked by certain wins that they had to do it very ugly, you know, for lack of better terminology there. So that's kind of why I have Florida State where I have them, but still a very high rank, and you know, there will be plenty of opportunities for them to hop into the top 4 if they keep winning their ball games. So that's where I have them, number 4. So the first playoff spot that I have at the mid-week, or the mid-season week point in the season, gonna have to put my Oklahoma Sooners in. I mean, they haven't necessarily been the most consistent on both sides of the football every single game. However, they've had dominant offensive games. They've had dominant defensive games. And then they had the win against number 10 Texas. That is a very solid win. That is a very impressive resume. That's why I have them over Florida State, because they have the better win in Texas than LSU in terms of Florida State. So that is why I have Oklahoma ahead of Florida State. I think that they have the better resume, and they have been a more complete team. Not necessarily together. However, against Texas, that was probably the most complete team we've seen Oklahoma, just because of how good Texas is. but we've seen very dominant performance on the offensive side. We've seen very dominant performance on the defensive side. Not necessarily at the same time in their games. There have been a few, but I just think that Oklahoma is the better team if you want to compare against Oklahoma and Florida State. Yeah, so that I'm pretty happy with that so far. Next we have Ohio State coming in at number 3. This is an interesting one. They haven't necessarily been too crazy consistent, but I see the trajectory that they're on. I really like where Ohio State is. Like, they've proven in the past that they can kind of start out slow in their season and build and grow throughout a season. And like, I've seen an Ohio State start out their season pretty badly, pretty poorly, and end the season like one of the top teams. And I think that Ohio State has the potential of being the best Big Ten team. That's why I have them at number 3. They also have the most impressive win. If we're going to compare Ohio State to Michigan, no, the win against Notre Dame is impressive. Kind of the same with Louisville. Impressive win against a very respected team. Now, granted, once again, I think Notre Dame has been kind of overhyped anyways this season. However, I still respect them enough to put Ohio State in the top 3 over Michigan, because I think that they've just proven it a little bit more so than Michigan. They have a better strength of schedule in my opinion than Michigan does. And that is why I have Ohio State in the top 3 compared to Michigan. So yeah, that's kind of where I see it. But once again, Michigan will have the opportunity to prove themselves to me. If they go in and you know, obviously, I think it's the last season or last game of their seasons. But you know, they go in. If Michigan beats Ohio State, all right, I don't have a problem with Michigan being ahead of Ohio State, because clearly they're the better team if they win that game. But also, there's another another Big Ten team that could possibly be upsetting both of these two teams. I don't have them in my top 10, but I do have them kind of outside looking in. I haven't been too terribly impressed with Penn State just yet. They still have a little bit to prove to me, but you know, they'll get that opportunity against Michigan. They'll get that opportunity against Ohio State. But I want to see more from Penn State before I am comfortable putting them in the top 10. So there's that. But I'm very happy with where Ohio State is. I think that they are on the right direction. I'm not a big Ohio State fan. I'm honest, like, I'm not a big fan of the dynasties that have kind of dominated the college football playoffs, and Ohio State's kind of one of those teams that always seems to find their way in the playoffs. So I'm definitely not like a Ohio State fan, but of the Big Ten teams, I think that they have the better argument, at least currently in the season. So that's kind of where we're at with that. Coming in at number 2, and this is probably where I'm going to get some flack, especially after how they did this last weekend. However, I haven't forgotten how they've been playing. And yes, this is, you know, a team that let's just get them up here so you guys know what I'm talking about. Georgia. I get it. They're the 2-time reigning national champions, and they blew the socks off Kentucky, an undefeated Kentucky. But I haven't forgotten how they'd played against Auburn. I haven't forgotten how they've been kind of sluggishly making their way through the first half of their season. Now it could just be that they just didn't really care about their first half of the season, and they just really wasn't playing at their fullest potential, and that could be it. And maybe that game against Kentucky exposed Kentucky. Maybe Kentucky's not as good as what we thought. However, they played Florida, I believe, pretty well. But then you look at Florida and they're not doing too great. So, I mean, it kind of all snowballs at that point. But I need to see more from Georgia. I like before they played Kentucky, I actually was going to put them at number 4. So they did hop up, in my opinion, of them when they beat the socks off of Kentucky. But I can't forget how their first half of their season has gone. It's not a number 1 team in the nation as far as I'm concerned. However, they can still have the opportunity to prove that to me. They went out, they beat whoever they play in the SEC championship game. I would probably put them in the number 1 seat going into the playoff at that point. But I'm just not, like, until we get to that point, I'm just not too high on Georgia right this moment. I think that they've proven that they have weaknesses too. But anyways, I digress. Now we are moving on to the number 1 team as far as I'm concerned. This might shock some people, but I really like where this team is. I'll get to them here in just a second. I think that they've been the most consistent. They really probably have maybe 1 blemish on their record. But the blemish, they're still undefeated. And it was against a decent Texas Tech team. And it was at Texas Tech that they almost lost, but they still came out on top and they still did well. That's really their worst game so far. And it was an early game. I think that's kind of the difference between this team and another team that I mentioned earlier who has been pretty awesome up until last week or the week that they played. And I'm kind of beating around the bush. Let's just go ahead and reveal who's my number 1 in the mid-season week. So I have Oregon at number 1. I think that they've been the most dominant team so far. They came out in the first game of the season scoring 81 points. They outscored what Oklahoma was able to do in their opening weekend. But Oregon has been the most consistent, with the exception of that Texas Tech game. But that was an early season game. Since then, they've been nothing but dominant. And why I have them over Washington, who really my main gripe about Washington was against Arizona. And the difference is Texas Tech was early in the season. So, Oregon was still figuring things out, and they still came out on top in that game. This one, we're in week 6. We just finished week 6 in Washington. I know it was week 5 that they played Arizona, but they almost lost. And to me, like, you can't do that. You've got to, if you're going to be a consistent dominant team, you need to do it later in the season. The further on we go into the season, like, style points start to matter, and that's why I have Oregon over Washington. I think that they're the better Pac-12 team, and I arguably think that they're the number 1 team in the nation right now. Now, their resume hasn't been the greatest, and I can see people saying, well, who have they played? That's fair. But they've been the most consistent, and that's what I like about this Oregon team. And they could play Washington and get the daylights knocked out of them against Washington. Or Oregon could beat the daylights out of Washington. But I just think that Oregon is the better team compared to those two teams. And I think that they are, as far as I'm concerned, the number one team in the nation. Currently at this point in the season. And really, the thing I like about this list is I have a Pac-12 team, I have an SEC team, I have a Big 10 team, I have a Big 12 team, and I have an ACC team, all ranked in order. I think that's kind of how it should be, at least earlier in the season. Whoever's the best of each conference, they should be the top teams. If they're undefeated, of course. You start losing your games, if the best conference leaders lose a game, that's when you kind of start to fill in, okay, now we can maybe have two Big 12 teams in the top four, or we can have two SEC schools, or we can have two Big 10 teams, or we can have two Pac-12 teams in the top four when teams start losing. But when you have, this is the perfect situation where you have the Power 5 schools, and I know I keep pointing this way, and on the stream it's going towards those people. I need to start pointing this way. It's kind of backwards on my screen. Oregon, Georgia, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Florida State, they're the leaders of their respected conferences right now, as far as I'm concerned. And I feel like that's how they should be ranked. The top 5 should be ranked that way. They're the Power 5 schools, and that's how it should be. And you could really rearrange any one of these teams. I would put the weaker conference in the lower two tiers, and that's kind of what we have. ACC has not really been that great. Big 12 hasn't really been all that great. Just going to be honest there. And then you can start fine-tuning it. All right, who has the better resumes? And kind of go from there. But this is how I think it should be, at least in the mid-season. Your conference leaders. Now, next year, it's not going to really matter. Next year, we're going to have 12-team playoff, and it really won't matter. You win your games, most likely you're going to be in. You just got to go undefeated, and you're almost guaranteed a spot. You can even be a one-loss team and almost be guaranteed a spot. So it doesn't really matter next year, but it does matter this year. And I think, as far as I'm concerned, your conference leaders, as long as they're undefeated, that should be how they're ranked. And you can rearrange it whatever order, but I think that's how it should be. And this doesn't necessarily mean what I view the conferences right now either. Like, I don't really think the Pac-12 is the best conference. I don't think the SEC is the second best. That's not the order that I'm going with in terms of which conference I think is better. But this is, the fact that I have one team from each Power 5 conference in the top 5, I think is fitting. And that's how it should be, as far as I'm concerned. Because other teams from the same conferences will have an opportunity to prove themselves. I'm trying to get my bearings straight here. Just doing like a little disco. But yeah, so that's kind of how I see it. And I'm just one fan of the sport. We all have our own opinions, but that's just how I see it. And maybe I'm wrong, but anyways, I'm kind of rambling at this point, but that is my top 10 teams. Those are who I think has the best chances of making the college football playoff. And yeah, I think that it'll be fascinating to see how this changes, how things progress. But now that we've reached the middle of the season, this is how I'm going to do my kind of eye test type poll. This is kind of my eye test poll. I have another poll that's based on statistical data that I'm about to get started on, and I'm kind of procrastinating on that one a little bit. But yeah, this is how I'm going to do it. And I'm going to start, now that we're at the halfway point, we have data to kind of go off of in terms of games that have been played. I'm going to start doing a top 10 list each and every week. In terms of the eye test, and then at the end of the season, I will do an eye test poll, or eye test top 10, and then I will do my actual wolf poll, which is the statistical data poll. But I hope that's not too confusing for anybody, but that's kind of where we're at. So anyways, all that to say, like, so we're about to transition to the wolf poll part of this segment. So if you just came for the top 10, I really do appreciate you stopping by. If you liked this video, definitely, do what YouTubers like to say, and like, subscribe, all that good stuff. It does really help, and it's free. So doesn't cost a single thing other than maybe a few muscle movements. But other than that, yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed that. And please, if you have any problems, or you like what you see in this top 10 list, definitely let me know. I love the feedback. I love hearing what people think about this sort of thing, and that's what this is all about. It's all about discussion. So definitely let me know what you guys think of this list, and maybe we can get some cool debates about stuff going on in the college football realm. But yeah, so if you just stop by for that, thank you, and I will see you in the next one. Now, if you're interested in the actual wolf poll, as I like to call it, this one is where I take statistical data, and I'm going to go ahead and switch screens here. So the whole point of this part of the video, well, the kickoff point is this poll, or is the statistical data poll. That is what kicks this sort of segment off, and that's kind of like what kind of glues this segment together. However, the true main purpose of this point of this particular series is discussion. I have the live chat on the screen right now, for you guys to follow along. And if you're pretty savvy with YouTube, which I'm pretty sure anybody watching this probably is, you'll have the actual live chat window available to you somewhere down where the comment section usually is in videos. And you guys can come in and chat college football. It doesn't necessarily have to be Oklahoma. I know this is kind of mainly an Oklahoma channel. It could be anything college football related, and I'll try to have whatever input I can, even on teams that I haven't really paid too close attention to. I would love to be able to chat about teams and maybe find out some information about how other teams are doing that is not being talked about. And so that's what this whole next segment is mainly about. Like, yeah, I'm going to be sitting here inputting data, but if you guys have any questions, or you want to, share a comment about college football, please utilize the live chat. That's what this part is for, truly. Yes, I'm inputting data, but I'm wanting this part to really be more about discussion than anything. So let me get kind of set up here. Should have already kind of had this somewhat ready to go. And I'm probably going to be a little bit quieter because I'm going to have to put the microphone down so I can type. But if you're new to this channel, and haven't seen my poll that I've created, let me get to the actual page. You can see that I have all of the teams in alphabetical order. And there is data points affiliated with each team in the following columns, and it's all about points. So you get points for doing various tasks throughout your season. Big one is winning your games. That one I award 1,000 points. If you lose your game, I subtract 500 points. Points scored. That one, you get a point per point. So if you have like 100 points in a season, you get 100 points. Point margin is an interesting one because that one is dependent upon how big or how little you won or lose your game. So you get positive points for winning your game and you get negative points for losing your game. And it's based off of the actual point margin of that game. So let's say you scored 10 points in a game. Your opponent scored 7. Then that point margin is 3. It's a positive 3 because you won that game. If you lose that game with the same point margin, it'd be negative 3 points. Pretty easy stuff there. And it's probably not really showing up too much. Here, I can actually scroll sideways. I also have a spot for how many touchdowns you have in a season. Now, I actually have a multiplier for this one. I multiply number of touchdowns by 100. I multiply your field goals. And I've already maxed out how far I can scroll over, but I'll just kind of tell you what the other columns are. Field goals, you can get 50 points per field goal. First downs, I give you 10 points per first down. Total yards, I give you 1 point per yard. And sacks, I believe I give you 10 points per sack. Forced turnovers, I give out 50 points per forced turnover. And tackles for loss, I give 5 points. So that is the criteria for how you gain points. Now, it is very, very simple. The more points you have, the higher you ranked. And the way I have this set up, the spreadsheet set up, all I have to do is type in the different data points, and the total points column will automatically add up all of the totals in that for that particular team. It'll dish out a total point value, and it'll automatically rank that team based off of their total points. And you'll see on the left-hand side what the rank is. Now you can see right now everybody's ranked 1 because in this particular spreadsheet, no data is inputted. Therefore, nobody distinguishes themselves from the rest because everybody is the same. But once I start inputting data, you'll start to see these teams will start updating, and it'll show where everybody's at. And the way the spreadsheet kind of works, when you start inputting it, then everybody below the current one that you're inputting data on will be the same rank. So it'll be like if I fill out Air Force, they'll be ranked 1, and then everybody else would be ranked 2. But whenever we get it all completely done, it'll kind of work itself out. Now there might be some teams that tie, and at the end of the season, I'm trying to think of some statistics that I can do for tiebreakers. So like, for example, if we have 2 number 1s and 2 number 2s, 2 number 3s, or whatever, wherever in this list, I want to have like a tiebreaker stat, and I will go in and add another X amount of points for whatever that tiebreaker is. And that way we can kind of separate teams a little bit more. So, but these are the main criterias, and like I said earlier, these are not the best stats for a good defensive team. I will definitely update that next year. But because we already started this in this season, before I started adding other criteria, I decided I would just kind of leave it where it is. It's the first type, or it's the first of its type, in terms of what I've done in terms of ranking, and it's kind of a prototype. So next year it'll be a lot more fine tuned and probably a lot more accurate to what actually happens. So we'll see what happens though, but we're going to just get started on this. And once again, if you guys have any questions or comments or whatever, feel free to put it in the live chat, and we'll just have a good time and we'll just kind of chat away about this sort of thing. So cool thing about this thing is I have actually put links to these teams' statistic pages. So all I have to do is click on their name and it will take me to the actual page. Let me see what happens now, because there was one issue that I was having where there was a bunch of advertisements. So what I might do, let's see, what should I do? Kind of hoping that I could make it to where it only does this window, and maybe I can if I make it its own separate window. So let's see what that does. Let me fix that real quick before we get too, because I don't want you guys to have to see like a bunch of advertisements that are for things that doesn't apply. So let me get that sorted. I should have done a test drive to get that sorted out for you guys beforehand, so I do apologize. Let's do that. There we go. So now I think if I go here, okay, cool. So now it'll stay on that, and so you guys won't have to see the advertisements. There we go. All right, so Air Force, they have five losses. They have 5 wins, so that is going to be a great stat. Already, they're 5-0, so that is really good. And this is where things get interesting, because now I'm gonna have to like manually put their total points. Or I'm gonna have to calculate it. Let's see here. So they got 42 plus 13 plus 39 plus 45 plus 49. That equals 188 points. Their point margin. So it would be, second, calculator, 7 plus 3 plus 21 plus 20 plus 10. They got 61 points on their opponents. Because they won, they get positive points in that regards. Minus 188, right? Just making sure. Yeah, 188. That equals 127. All right. Once I get into a groove, I'll be able to be a little bit faster, but I'm out of practice. All right, 127. So now I can go to their next page here on their statistics page. And they scored total touchdowns, 26 touchdowns. Now we'll look at how many field goals they've got. They've got field goal attempts, 4 out of 4. Wow, they're perfect. So they got 4 field goals. All right, next we're going to look at first downs. I wonder if I can... There we go. That'll be a lot faster. I'll use keyboard shortcuts here. First downs, they've got 115. Total yards, 2,059. All right, number of sacks. I believe that stat will be on a different page. Yeah, here we go. Total sacks. They've got 12 sacks so far. And forced turnovers. So fumble recoveries, they've got 3 so far. Interceptions, 3 and 3, so they've got 6 turnovers. And on tackles for loss, that one has to be on a separate website because for some reason ESPN on at least the computer browser does not record that data. Now it does on a phone ESPN app record tackles for loss, but for some reason the PC version doesn't. It's kind of weird. So for now, we're done with Air Force, and as you can see, they have 11,744 points. Of course, they'll get a few more points on tackles for loss, but that's kind of how this kind of thing goes. And once I get into a rhythm, I'll start to be a little bit faster. However, this time around, compared to the last time, I'm gonna have to do a lot more calculations to calculate all the total points and mainly the point margin one, and that might honestly be something that I do last as well, kind of like with the tackles for loss, because I might just have to skip that because that will be a lot of going back and forth to try to figure out things. So the more I could streamline this, the better. So I might skip point margin for now, and then that way I'm not having to do quite as much calculations throughout this whole thing, and then maybe like just as the last thing I can go in and do the point margins all at once. So that's kind of how the flow goes. And once again, I want to reiterate the point, like, this is probably not the most exciting thing in the world, showing or me doing data entry, but once again, the point of this video is not necessarily the data entry. This is just the thing that kind of glues the video together. It's really more about discussion. So please, if you have anything that you want to talk about, that's what the live chat is for. And I'm probably this time around, I'm not gonna do quite as much data entry on screen. I'll probably try to do that in the background. That way I can be focused more on getting this done. However, I want to be able to chat with you guys. So fire away, and that way we can have things rolling in that regards. But let's kind of move on to Akron. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can open link in a new window. That way, there we go. That way I can prevent it from pulling up on the live stream. There we go. So Akron, man, they have one win. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So they've played 6 times and they've only won 1 game. That's pretty bad. So let's go back to the actual win-loss thing. So they are 1-5. So Akron, they've got 1 win. 5 losses. Total points scored. Let's go to their statistics because they actually have total points in another spot. Total points, they have 99 points. I'm going to skip the point margin. We'll do touchdowns next. Total touchdowns they've got 12. Number of field goals, they've got 5 out of 11 attempts. 5 field goals. How many first downs? They've got 104 first downs. Total yards. 1,768. 1768. Total sacks. That will be on this screen here. They've got a total of 13 sacks. And forced turnovers. They've got 4 interceptions and 4 fumble recoveries, so 8. Not bad. What in the world? Whoops. There we go. That was kind of weird. All right. So they are now finished for now. I'll come back to them to fill out 2 more stats later on, but I'm going to do all of that at one time. It'll be easier that way. Now we are moving on to Alabama. Crimson Tide. Open link in new window. So they are 5-1. Their only loss is to Texas. So they have 5 wins. They have 1 loss. Points scored. They've scored a total of 187 points. I'll skip point margin for now. How many touchdowns would that be? Total touchdowns, 21 touchdowns. More field goals? 12 for 12. 12 field goals. And first downs. 109 first downs. Now, that's another thing too that does kind of stink about this is these stats are completely based on what ESPN records, and I've already found a lot of inaccuracies in week 1. They didn't have everything inputted correctly, at least not fast. Like there were a lot of teams that their information was completely out of whack. It did get, like, a lot of those teams' stats did get corrected throughout the season. I'm just gonna trust. I know that's probably that means I'm putting inaccurate data in on some of this stuff, but I'm just gonna trust what ESPN reports, and that for now that's what this will be based off of. If I can find a more reliable source than ESPN, then I will probably utilize it instead to record all this data from, because yeah, I've not been too impressed with ESPN in regards to their data entry. But for now, for this season, it'll definitely be from ESPN. So any inaccuracies is their fault. So total yards, they got a grand total of 2160. Number of sacks, they've got 22 sacks. Pretty solid defense there. Forced turnovers, they've got 7 interceptions and 2 fumble recoveries, so that would be 9 turnovers. And now Alabama is done. So Air Force is number 1. Alabama is 2. Only temporary though. However, this poll will probably favor Air Force pretty solidly because they are undefeated right now. So they will probably be pretty highly ranked on this when it's all said and done. Now I am going to go ahead and I did fill out their point margin, but just for the time being, I'm going to go ahead and reset their point margin back to 0. That way, while I'm filling it out, we'll have a more accurate representation of where they're at evenly, and then whenever I go through and do all the point margins, then it'll kind of fine-tune teams a little bit more. So yeah, I mean, because the point margin is not going to be a huge difference, but it will definitely distinguish teams that are like either equal in points or very close. And so that's another good point to make there, but I'll do all of the point margin stuff later. All right, we're now on to App State. So let's go ahead and close Alabama's window. Open in a new window. All right, we're going to do something slightly different here. I am going to go ahead and record their wins and losses real quick. So they have, App State has 3 wins and 2 losses. Three wins. Two losses. And then this is where I'm going to start to do things slightly out of the order that I've been doing them, because whenever I click the statistics page on ESPN's website, it brings up the information that I'm able to find total sacks and turnovers from. So I'm going to do those first. So they've got 12 sacks. And that'll help me be a little bit more efficient. And they've got 7 interceptions and 2 fumbles, so they too got 9. Nice. All right. The next stat will be probably total points. So they've got 212 total points, 130 first down, so 212, 130. Well, what was it? I've clicked the wrong buttons. 212 points, 130 first downs. What is it doing? Having some technical difficulties. Gotta love technology. I like technology. Not as much as you see. I like technology. Always and forever. 130. They've got... Oh, they actually added interceptions to the list here. So I don't necessarily have to... Hey! ESPN actually updated their statistics page. Now I don't have to go to another page to find that information. I can actually get that from the same page. That wasn't there at the first of the season. That was kind of annoying having to go back and forth. So that's good that they actually added that information. That's going to be very helpful. That'll make this a whole lot faster. Let's do total yards. 23, 21. Total yards. Let's see, how many touchdowns did they get? Kind of skipped over that one. Total touchdowns, they've got 27. And number of field goals. They've got 10 out of 12. 10 field goals. Boom. All right, now we're starting to get some separation on some of these teams. All right. So now we can move on to Arizona. I am kind of interested to see how Arizona's doing because I did give Washington a lot of crap for almost losing to Arizona. And it'll be fascinating to see where they end up, to see if that was valid criticism or if they're a better team, which now looking at their wins and losses, they're half and half, 3-3. So yeah, I don't really feel bad about that. All right, so 3-3. So they've got 3 wins and 3 losses. 3 wins, 3 losses. Next, we'll do points scored. That's going to really help not having to get the information from two different pages in terms of the turnovers and sacks. All right, total points 175 and total touchdowns 22, 175, 22. Total first downs 146. Total yards 2650. Number of sacks 11. And forced turnovers. Oh, you know what? It says interceptions, but it doesn't say fumbles. Fumbles and lost. Okay, those are down there. So they've got 6 fumble recoveries and 7 interceptions. Seven plus 6 is 13. Whoops. There we go. Keep fat fingering stuff. Okay. And field goals. Field goal attempt 6 out of 8, so they got 6. And that should do it for Arizona. So now I can exit out of their stats. And now we're moving on to Arizona State. See what that does. Okay, it looks like I'm still on the right page. All right. So Arizona State, they are 1-5. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 1-5. So 1 win, 5 losses. Points scored. 112 with 13 touchdowns. 112. 13 touchdowns. Let's do first downs next. Total first downs 112. Wow, they got the same amount of points scored as first downs. That's crazy. So you find out some interesting stats whenever you do stuff like this. Total yards 2,053. Number of sacks, 22. It's pretty solid, actually. And turnovers, 8 interceptions, 8 and 8 fumbles. Okay, so 8. That's 16. 16 turnovers. Dang. They're turnover machines, but they can't win their games. It's pretty good, really. All right. So now, oh, I almost forgot. Field goals. 6 out of 7. I'm good. I'm glad that I'm seeing that teams, even though they have losses, they still have positive points. I was kind of afraid of that. Like whenever I was like, I had you losing points when you lose. I was kind of afraid that people would be in the negatives, but now I'm seeing that all the other statistics kind of boost them out of the negatives. So that's good to see. From that, because I was kind of afraid of that. I mean, it's fine to have negative points, but it's kind of odd. All right, now we're done with Arizona State. Arkansas. Arkansas has 2 wins and 4 losses. See, they're kind of one of those teams that they could just get over that hump of losing their games really closely. They could be a pretty good team this year. Points scored. Total points, 190 points. Total touchdowns, 23. Excuse me. 23 total touchdowns and 113 first downs. 23, 113. So 23, 113. Total yards, 1997. Number of sacks, 23. Total sacks. Turnovers. They've got 6 interceptions and 11 fumbles. Wow. Oh, I'm reading that wrong. I'm reading that statistic wrong. Fumbles lost. They fumbled the ball, but they were able to recover it 11 times. But the loss statistics, I'm totally messing up that statistic. I'm gonna have to go back and redo the turnovers for each team. That's my bad. I completely misunderstood that statistic. I thought it was fumbles, like that's how many they recovered, and the lost one was how many that they lost. But that makes a lot more sense. Total fumbles. Okay. So I still need to go to that other page then. Oh, I think the same thing is. I think I misunderstood their sacks statistic. We're already off to a great start, aren't we? Telling you, ESPN, they need to get this like figured out a little bit more. It's kind of getting annoying. Um, and that's probably the offensive interceptions. That's probably not even how many interceptions they got on the defense. Okay, well, I'm gonna have to redo those statistics, unfortunately. That's really unfortunate. One second. Yeah, they need to like change some terminologies to make it a little bit less confusing, because I thought that that was what that meant, and that is not what they were meaning, and it just clicked all of a sudden. I'm glad I didn't make it to all the way through only to find out that I did that. So I'm glad I found that now. Otherwise, this would have sucked to have to go back and do 133 teams again in terms of their turnovers and sack information. So, darn it, man, that's really unfortunate. I wish I didn't misunderstand that. Field goals. Let's see how many they got. They've got 9 out of 10. So, what I might end up doing for the sack statistics and forced turnover statistics and tackles for loss statistics, I may just find like a page that has all that information all in one spot, and then I might just go through and just input all the data, so that way I don't have to go back and forth, which that it'd be probably good to see if I can find a better source for the statistical data, because I've already come across inaccuracies in ESPN's stuff. Granted, that was week 1. This is week 0 or week 6 rather. So I hope they got all of that ironed out. Otherwise, this information would be inaccurate. But I'm just gonna kind of go with it and hopefully it's accurate information. Hopefully they got everything figured out. After 6 weeks of ironing out the kinks. Okay. Trying to think of what I want to do. Do I want to just go ahead and do all the sacks and turnovers right now just to get caught back up? Hmm. You know what? I'm going to get caught back up. And there hasn't really been a whole lot of discussion, unfortunately. But hey, whenever, yeah, I'm going to definitely do another episode tomorrow evening. I'm going to fill on this video. I will go ahead and fill out, get the sacks information, get the forced turnover information filled out, and then that way we get everybody caught up. I'm going to do some data entry off screen, but I will do another episode of this tomorrow, and that way we can have more discussion opportunities. But yeah, I mean, if you're watching this video, definitely utilize the live chat. It's there for you guys, and the point of this whole part of the video is for discussion, really, more so than the data entry. So that is what it's there for. But we're gonna go ahead and finish this out real quick, just the get the sacks and forced turnover statistics caught back up, and then we'll go ahead and call it a night. So yeah, I gotta go back to each one of these teams. I think I do have Arkansas, their stuff booted up, so let me just go ahead and get their information. But real quick, they've got 16 sacks. And they've got 7 interceptions and 4 fumble recoveries. So 7, 4, that would be 11. Turnovers. All right. Let's do the next team, which is Arizona State. Statistics. They've got 18 sacks. And 0 interceptions and 1 fumble recovery. So that makes a lot more sense on Arizona State. I was wondering why. It had like a ton of turnovers, and yet they were losing their games. It's like, that makes no sense. That makes a lot more sense now. They only had like 1 turnover. All right, now we're doing Arizona. Oh, wrong button. They've got 17 sacks. Forced turnovers. They've got 0 interceptions and 5 fumble recoveries. My goodness. That's so one-sided. 0 interceptions, but they got 5 fumble recoveries. They know how to punch the ball out. They just don't know how to catch a ball. All right. Next, we have App State. Statistics. And they've got 12 sacks. And how many turnovers? They've got 7 interceptions and 2 fumble recoveries, so that'd be 9. All right. Then you have Alabama. They have 22 sacks and 9 turnovers. So that statistic was right, which I do remember doing theirs. So I probably could have left everybody from this point up, but I wanted to make sure. I just double check because I want to be as accurate as possible. Akron. Oops. Sacks. They got 13 sacks. Forced turnovers. They've got 4 interceptions and 4 fumble recoveries, so that would be 8. And lastly, Air Force. They have 12 sacks and 3 interceptions and 3 fumble recoveries, so 6. All right, cool. So now you can kind of get the idea of how this kind of goes, like kind of how these teams are going to be ranked. As you can tell, we already are starting to see some of these teams start to get placed. And you could tell right off the bat, like winning your games gives you an advantage. And even in this situation, you have a 5-0 team and they're number 1. So winning your games puts you at the top. I mean, Alabama has a loss, so that naturally puts them below Air Force. Now they've played more games. Alabama has played 6 games. Air Force has only played 5. But they get penalized because they have lost. And granted, there's not much separation between these two schools right now in terms of where they're going to be placed. Right now, without other information, mind you, I still have 2 more data points for each team. But you can see like Air Force, they're 1. But they have 11,617 points. Alabama, who's number 2 on this list so far, is 11,307. So there is like a 310, my bad, 310 point difference between the 2 teams. So winning your games will definitely help you out. But as you can see, like later on, you'll start to see some separation between teams who, yeah, they're winning their games, but all the other criteria will help bolster their points a little bit more, and it will put them above the others. So that's the cool part about this sort of thing. I'm such a nerd when it comes to this kind of thing, but yeah, it's fascinating. And so you can kind of tell off to the side here that they're kind of out of order in terms of what their rank is currently. That's a very easy and quick fix. So all I have to do is click this little sorting icon, and I can click sorting A through Z. And now it numerically rearranges all of the teams based on that statistic. So you can see now Air Force is 1, Alabama is 2, App State is 3, Arizona is 4, Arkansas is 5, Arizona State is 6, Akron is 7, and then after Akron, I haven't inputted any data, so everybody else is now 8. So now you kind of get an idea of what this looks like going forward. And of course, I still got to put the point margin information in. That could be a difference maker between Alabama and Air Force. It may not. And also tackles for loss. That's another statistic that could ultimately affect where these teams end up. So far that's kind of where we're at, but I just wanted to kind of get started with it with you guys. And yeah, like this will be fascinating to see where these teams get ranked when it's all said and done. I'm going to have a tight schedule with this, and I'm probably going to need to start inputting some of this data throughout the day if I can. So I might can find some time during my lunch hour to fill out some of this information, because there's a lot to go through, and I want to get it done before the next game, which is going to be like Thursday probably. So it's already probably going to be inaccurate at that point, because I don't think I'm going to be able to get all of these done before Thursday at least, but I'll definitely work on them Thursday night and probably even Friday night as well, and it'll definitely get done. But I'm going to definitely do Wednesday night, Thursday night, and Friday night, but it'll probably be a late night. That one will be, because I have plans in the evening times on Fridays now, so it'll be kind of difficult to do that at a reasonable time. So I'm gonna have to wait until I get home to finish it up, but it's gonna be a lot of work. Next year I'm gonna do everything I can to get prepared better and automate everything. So wherever I get the statistical data from, there are methods you can do to data scrape from websites, and it sounds like worse than what it is, but essentially you're able to type in commands into each cell, and that command will take data from a website and it will apply whatever information from that website to that cell. So if I wanted to know how many wins Alabama had in their season, I could go to that website on, or to their statistics page on the ESPN website, and find the web page data, the HTML information or whatever. I think it's HTML, but whatever the web page coding information logic is. I'm not very tech savvy in that regards, but the data that the touchdown information is stored in, I can take that and put that into this page, and then all I have to do is click refresh, and it will automatically refresh all the information for me, and that will streamline this process like that. Like, I would be able to probably have this thing working weekly even, and not have to do once in the beginning of the season, another one in the mid-season, and another one in the post-season. I can just do it weekly at that point, but it's a lot of work, and I'm gonna have to do that for literally each and every cell. So for every team and for every data entry point, and so that's gonna be a lot of work, and that will definitely be something that'll keep me busy in the off season, and I may not even have enough time to get it done in the off season. So, but I'm gonna definitely fine tune this and make it as streamlined as possible, so that way the next time I do this poll in the future seasons, I will be able to make it so much easier. So anyways, that's gonna do it for tonight. I know we didn't get too terribly far tonight. It's kind of getting late, and the stream is going a little bit longer already, so I'm gonna go ahead and call it a night. I was hoping to get a lot more done, but this is just kind of a glimpse of what to expect from this series. And once again, I know I keep saying this, but I just want to keep reiterating it. The whole point of the series is not necessarily the data entry part. Like, I know that's probably super boring. It's the discussionary part. Now, nobody really said anything in the live chat in this episode, unfortunately, but that's okay. Plenty of opportunities to hop into this sort of chat. So this is the type of live stream that's supposed to be chill, supposed to be an opportunity to hang out with you guys and talk college football. So that's where we're at. But hopefully we'll get more participation in the next episode, and we'll go from there. So that's where we're at, and I can't wait to get this thing rolling further and get it completely done. We got 133 teams that we've got to fill out information for, so definitely going to be a project, but we'll get it done for sure. And at the end of the week, I will show my mid-season rankings from this poll, and that will be kind of how I gauge the teams moving forward. So this will be like kind of a baseline for my own personal rankings. The ones where I just kind of do like an eye test, I will take this information and kind of apply that to information to kind of some of the eye test information that I see and come up with like a weekly top 10 list based off of this as kind of like a foundation. But I already started this video with my mid-season top 10, so that's kind of where we're at. But I'm rambling at this point. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing where these teams end up at the midway point. So it'll be fascinating. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. You guys take care. Bye.